You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
In lieu of our regular daily briefing on this July 4th, we are celebrating U.S. Independence Day and taking the day off. So please enjoy this encore presentation of T-minus overview.
Did you know Active Directory is targeted in 9 out of 10 cyber attacks? Once attackers get in, they can take control of your entire network. That's why Sempris created Purple Knight, the free security assessment tool that scans your Active Directory for hundreds of vulnerabilities and shows you how to fix them. Join thousands of IT pros using Purple Knight to stay ahead of threats. Download it now at sempris.com/purple-knight. That's sempris.com/purple-knight.
I'm Maria Varmazes, host of the T-minus Space Daily podcast, and you're listening to T-minus Overview.
T-minus 20 seconds to LOS.
In this program, we'll feature some of the conversations from our daily podcast with the people who are forging the path in the new space era. From industry leaders, technology experts and pioneers, to educators, policymakers, researchers, and more. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs has released a study on gender equality in the space sector, and the key findings found that women make up only 30% of public sector space organizations, and that they are particularly underrepresented in technical, astronaut, and policy roles. Well, we spoke to 2 female astronauts about what attracted them to the space industry. Our first guest is Megan Christian, European Space Agency Astronaut Reserve and Commercial Exploration Lead at the UK Space Agency. And I started by asking Megan about how she got into her role at ESA.
When the announcement came out that they were going to have another round of selections, there was no thinking about it. I was absolutely going to apply, but all the thinking, I guess, came a long time before that. I was definitely fascinated by space when I was a kid, when I was, about 10 or 11 years old and starting to learn about the planets and stars and black holes and things like that. But I grew up in Australia, and there was no space agency at the time, so I didn't actually think of it as being a possible career for me. It was just kind of there in the back of my mind, along with all these amazing experiences I'd had at museums, going to space museums and things like that. So it remained as kind of a passion, but not something that I followed up on. So I actually ended up doing a Bachelor of Engineering in Industrial Chemistry. And after that, I stayed on and did a PhD. I was working on nanomaterials for hydrogen storage, fuel cell vehicles. After that, I was looking for a postdoc and I wanted some international experience. So I actually found a postdoc at the National Research Council of Italy in Bologna. Uprooted my life, and my husband as well came with me for what was supposed to be a 1 to 2 year postdoc in Bologna in Italy, but we actually ended up staying there for 9 years. There I was working on a material called graphene for a lot of different applications and still kind of keeping my alternative energy thread. But also I had some space-related applications, which is where these things start to come back. And so the particular project I was working on was using graphene for cooling devices in satellites. And so, of course, that needs to be able to work in conditions of weightlessness, which is where I got to experience my first couple of parabolic flights. So I actually got to experience what it's like to work in weightlessness. And this was actually before I even knew that the European Space Agency was going to be having another round of applications for astronauts. So it was completely separate, but it's starting to bring these things together. But what really convinced me was when I then went and spent a year in Antarctica doing climate change research at Concordia Station, which is a really isolated base. And it was while I was there that I decided that I wanted to do something similar to what I was doing in those extreme conditions, but in some conditions that are even more extreme.
Oh my God. Okay, a year in Antarctica. Please tell me, I mean, as if one can summarize such an experience, but what an incredible experience on so many different levels, psychologically, scientifically. Please tell me about what that was like.
Yeah, it is. It was a life-changing experience, and it is really hard to summarize. But it was a hugely special moment for me in my life. Um, Antarctica is another one of those things that I'd kind of been fascinated by when I was a kid. I went to the International Antarctic Centre in Christchurch in New Zealand when I was about 12 or something like that, and I thought, maybe one day I'll get there. I'll earn a lot of money and get to go on a cruise to Antarctica or something like that. But again, I didn't really think that I would actually get to work there. But the National Research Council, where I was working, they have permanent observatories at Concordia Station, which is this really isolated base in the middle of nowhere on the eastern Antarctic plateau. And so they send around an email to all staff once per year asking if anybody is interested in going to spend the year and do a winter over there. And so the first time I saw that email, I thought back to when I was at that museum at 12 years old, and I thought, oh, that would be amazing. But there's no way that they would accept someone like me because I had a background in material science, applied sciences, and they were looking for somebody to look after the observatories for atmospheric physics and meteorology. And I didn't even really know what atmospheric physics was. So I just actually let it slide. I thought, okay, well, just that would be amazing, but it's not for me. But a year later, this email came around again, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to write back to them, see if they'll accept an application from someone like me. And they wrote back and said, yeah, come and have a chat. Turned out that chat was an interview, and next thing I know, I'm training to go and spend a year in Antarctica. So it was incredible. I mean, we got down to a temperature of minus 104 degrees Celsius wind chill. And we had 100 days where the sun didn't come above the horizon. I was working outside every day, so it was tough, both physically and mentally.
I'm admiring you so much, as if I couldn't already. My levels went even higher. That is fascinating, and just I can imagine thinking after that experience, a stint in space must be like, all right, I've got this. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I mean that it kind of was something along those lines because the work that you're doing there, yes, you're in extreme conditions, but you were doing a kind of technician's role of being a custodian of other people's experiments. People have put their life's work into designing these experiments, but they can't be there to be the hands that look after them. And that's what astronauts do on the International Space Station as well. So they're actually really quite similar roles. And given that I loved it, and also I learned a lot about myself. I think before I went there, there were a few things that I thought maybe I won't be able to do this, technical skills that I didn't necessarily think that I would be able to develop. But I had to learn a whole lot in a really short amount of time in those 2 weeks that I had of crossover with the person before me. And I loved that. I really loved that steep learning curve. So that kind of gave me the confidence to go, yes, I can learn, I can do this. And I want to try and do it in space as well.
To me, it does parallel, as you said so beautifully, the astronaut in space experience, that you have to know how to work in those extremely difficult conditions with others, and you complement each other well. It does feel like a natural step. It's quite amazing when you tell the story back. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, and you're also being motivated by this incredible natural environment that you have around you. In the case of Antarctica, that's this desert of ice, but also in those 100 days of darkness, the stars are absolutely incredible. There was one task I had to do, which was go out to a tower with a bunch of meteorological instruments on it once per week and go and clean all those instruments. And this tower is about 45 meters high. It's about 1 kilometer away from the base. We're at high altitude, so it's quite hard work, just walking and climbing and so on. But so it was the toughest part of the week, but it was also the best part of the week because my colleague and I, that we did it together, we would as we walked out there, take our headlamps off and just let our eyes adjust to the darkness and look up at the stars, which was it was like being completely blanketed by them. And if it was a moonless day, we could actually see our shadow in the light of the Milky Way. That's how bright the stars were.
Oh my gosh! What a beautiful, beautiful image, Megan. I'm thrilled just to be speaking with you. Thank you for telling me about your experiences. We haven't even gotten to what's happening. Tell me about when you got the news that you were sort of being called up out of the reserves. That must have been an exciting moment.
Well, this training is for all of the reserves. So I'm not being singled out in any way, just to specify. But finally, after the basic training of the career astronauts is complete, that means that there is now the opportunity for the reserves to have our training, which is it's a kind of condensed version of the basic training that the career astronauts have just been through. It's going to be a total of about 6 months with 2-month intensive stints 3 times over the next couple of years. It's really exciting because there were no guarantees that we were actually going to have this training. As I mentioned at the beginning, this reserve concept is completely new. But there are more and more sort of commercial opportunities becoming available for flights. And in fact, the first person from our class to fly was one of the reserves. That was Marcus Wandt from Sweden. He went on what's called a private astronaut mission, though it was institutional in any case, to the International Space Station back in January. And so this training is really preparing us for any opportunities like that may come up in the future.
That's exciting. And you start in January, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So there are too many of us to do it in one block. So we're having two rounds. There's one class that will be doing theirs between October and December, and then the other class, including myself, will be doing it January, February, heading over to Cologne in Germany to the European Astronaut Center.
And I imagine you will be thrilled with any kind of assignment. But if you were able to put in a request, I know it doesn't work that way, a dream assignment, what would you like to be able to do?
If there's no restrictions at all, I would love to go to the moon. I just have this vision of standing on the moon and looking back on Earth the way that we look at the moon from Earth, and having that reciprocal perspective. I think that would just be incredible.
I can only, oh my gosh, can you imagine? What an amazing experience. Megan, one of the many things I really love about your story is that you mentioned at the very beginning where you grew up at the time. Now there is an Australian space agency, but there are many places in the world where there are children, like when you were a child, where maybe space isn't seen as a viable career one day or a thing, or even a dream worth pursuing. What would you tell kids who are, in the situation you were in as a kid, where maybe you're going, well, there's no path for me. There's no point in me dreaming of this. What would you tell those kids?
Yeah, I mean, you only have to look at the examples of my example, but also people like Tim Peake. The UK did not invest at all in human spaceflight before Tim was selected as an astronaut, and then he got to have his 6-month mission on the International Space Station. So you never know what's going to come, and so it's worth keeping that dream in your mind. It doesn't mean that you have to be completely focused on it. I don't think that would necessarily make a lot of sense. You can't decide that you want to be an astronaut and make that the only thing in your life, because unfortunately you still have to be a little bit lucky to be selected. There will be more opportunities in the future, but for now it's really only a small amount of people that are lucky enough to get to do it. So the key is to kind of chase down something that you really enjoy doing anyway. So find yourself in a career of things that you enjoy doing, and then you'll be at the top of your game. So you're more likely to be selected as an astronaut if you do apply. And hey, if you're not selected, then you're already feeling fulfilled and doing something that you love. So if you are selected, it's just a bonus.
Our second guest is a commercial astronaut who forged her place in history as the youngest woman to travel to the Kármán line. Carson Kitchen is a student, an entrepreneur, and an astronaut.
I am a senior at UNC Chapel Hill. I study communications and astronomy. I also recently founded an organization called Orbitel. That is an initiative that aims to inspire young women, specifically non-STEM minded young women, to pursue opportunities and careers in the space industry. Let's see what else. Oh, and I just am a newly minted astronaut. I recently just became the youngest woman to travel past the Kármán line at age 21. So my life has been really crazy right now.
Say, not to bury the lead or anything on that one. You happen to have also had this incredibly singular experience, which gotta say, for pretty much the rest of your life, you're gonna be like, top this one.
Yeah, literally.
So for folks who don't know about the Blue Origin flight that you were on, so this was NS-26. Tell me a bit about the story about how you heard about Blue Origin and kind of got interested in going to space with Blue Origin.
So I was always really interested and fascinated by space when I was a kid. Some of my first memories are me actually looking around in my environment and looking up specifically at the night sky. I was just so fascinated by space and the ever expanding field of it. And I was also really fascinated, which I later came to find out was physics, but I was really fascinated by how the world around me worked, how I could stay on the ground, I could only jump up a certain amount. I was also really fascinated by water and how water moved, and why it moved a certain way. And just
fluid dynamics, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just really interested in how this world worked around me. I consider myself a very lucky person because if you asked me when I was 3 years old or 5 years old or 7 or 13 or even 18 or even 2 months ago what I wanted to be, I would have the same answer, and that would be to work in the space industry, to be an astronaut. Space is the bane of my existence. It's why I'm here. And I know that. It's my purpose in life is to work in the space industry. I am just meant for space. And so I had a really interesting upbringing with it because I just naturally am better at arts and humanities, like English, history. That just naturally comes better to me. I have to try a lot harder in math and science. So I struggled with that in high school and a little bit about with that at the beginning of college and just where I kind of fit in the space industry, and I got the opportunity to go to my father's launch. So my father, Jim Kitchen, actually flew with Blue Origin, and it represented something different to him. A lot of people say that I am following in his footsteps, and that doesn't, I wouldn't say it annoys me, but it's just, I wouldn't say that's naturally the right thing because he didn't grow up talking about space. That was just an interest that I developed on my own, which is actually really interesting, nature versus nurture, because he also has an interest, but I just didn't hear about it growing up. But I was kind of under the impression before that I really wasn't going to be able to fit into the space industry because I wasn't on track to get a degree in quantum physics. I wasn't going to be an engineer. I was under the impression that the space industry was only, really very highly scientific, esoteric group of people. And I went to his launch and I got the opportunity to meet so many different people who work in such unique parts of the space industry, specifically humanities, journalists, writers, all of these artists, fun people who I was I can see myself working in that kind of job. And it, kind of ignited this kind of fire. It rekindled this fire I already had. And so I kept in touch with all of these people and I told them that I wanted to go to space. And I was I think it'd be great for you because you sent the youngest man to space and you can send me and I could represent the youngest woman. And that would be a monopoly.
Oh, I
for
love
you.
it. You pitched yourself
for your
I
business.
love that. Yeah.
But also I can be able to go to space. And so I guess I ended up liking my business pitch because here I am today. But I'm also can I have a job? I love space and I promise you I won't regret it.
All right, so I feel like you're still fresh off of your flight. Are there enough superlatives in the universe to describe the time that you were up there? I mean, can you relay any of that to me?
I think that's really funny because I hate saying oh my God, words cannot describe that experience because people are okay, well, can you try? Like, can you maybe like try to put a couple together, maybe, like string some? And I'm like, I obviously I study communications, and vocabulary is based off of human experience, and not a lot of people have experienced space. So obviously it's
Yeah.
normal that we don't have vocabulary to just describe some of that. But I will try my best. I think that was every adjective ever. Every I experienced, which is why I think I was so tired after my flight, because it's also physically draining. But
Yeah.
I experienced every single human emotion, literally every single human emotion, and with a span of like 15 minutes, which is so insane. Like that rocket took off, and the fire that comes, like the dragon's breath, it was literally like sitting on top of a dragon, because it kind of like awakes. It starts, you hear this like beating heart of that rocket, and the fire just completely encapsulates the totality of the cabin. And you're pushed off of this earth with such an immaculate speed that it seriously takes your breath away. And it's like, everyone knows the feeling of being on a roller coaster and dropping, and your stomach kind of drops. But it was the opposite kind of reaction. I felt like my stomach was being pushed out. And I remember like we were going so fast, because we were going 2,300 miles an hour. And I'm like, we are going so fast. Like, this is a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. And honestly, I was like, I was like, I'm so excited and I'm so happy and I'm like so lucky to be doing this, but I'm also like kind of freaking out. And
that is the most honest reaction I've ever heard. Oh my God, bless you for saying that. Because I'm just like, how could you not be freaking out? Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but I was like, I remember when we went past like the clouds, I was like, okay, I'm really doing this. Like, they're really like, this is actually happening. Like, I'm literally leaving the Earth's atmosphere right now. Like, this is loco. Like, this is literally crazy loco. What's happening right now? Is this really like the plan of action I wanted to take in my life? Like, I couldn't pick something like maybe like a little less crazy to be my area of interest, but I'm like, wow, of course I have to shoot for the stars.
You're halfway up and you're like, having some second thoughts. Well,
I was so excited and I had no negative emotion. I was just like, I was honestly laughing to myself, because I'm like, of course, like I chose the craziest like life. But I remember when we went past the clouds and the sky starts to get darker, like everything becomes to kind of get quieter and quieter. And then Miko and separation happen and you're free falling, and everything just in an instant just like stops. It's the quietest life has ever been. And you just, it literally is like time stops. And I remember looking out of my window and seeing like this incredibly bright blue fluorescent beating heart of an earth. And I was like, that thing is alive. Like, that thing is like that thing can feel, and that thing is a lot powerful than we think it is. And it's so beautiful. And the wisp of the atmosphere in this little bubble that takes care of us and loves us and nourishes us and gives us everything we need. And you can see the texture of the mountains and the beautiful like beauty marks that Earth has. And it's a lot smaller than I thought it would be, but it's so bright. And I think that's what really took my breath away. And to look down at that planet and be like, that's my home. That is where everything that has ever existed has lived, and how incredibly powerful that is, and how that everything I've ever loved and I ever will love is on this beautiful planet. And it is my duty to take care of it. And it is my duty to enjoy my life, because that thing has been there for 4.5 billion years. And humans have only been alive for like 300,000. And how good things take time. And you know, how lucky I am to be able to be alive in this moment in time, to be able to experience this, to be able to experience everything that life has to offer me, to be able to go on a walk through my neighborhood, to be able to laugh with my friends, to be able to see that we all gather together at the end of the day to watch our sun go down is so beautiful. And it's just how lucky I am to be able to feel the wind against my face and, to swim in our beautiful ocean. And I think it was just made me really lucky, made me feel really lucky and really grateful, and to just be able to be alive. And then you look out at this black contrast, this vastness, this black void, devoid drought of space. And it is so black. It is so black. And my crewmate said it perfectly. He said that it sucks your brain out of your head, which is kind of true. It really does. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's the blackest black I've ever seen. And it's a really interesting contrast, because while it is the blackest black you've ever seen, it also has depth and it has dimension to it. And you can see that it has space. And then to look back and to see this flourishing, breathing, beating planet, you're like, oh my gosh, out of nothing, out of literally nothing, we are here flourishing. We are sending people back into space. We are here living. And that is the greatest gift that any of us have ever been given, to just be able to be alive and to exist here. And I feel like my entire life just changed in an instant, and I can see how it's changed in my life. My life feels quieter. It's less noisy. I feel grateful. I'm able to bright side things on my life more. I'm able to just take a breath, and like, it's crazy even going on a walk. Like, I just feel so lucky to be alive and to just like have this incredible perspective. And I was so emotional.
A very special thank you to both our guests, Megan Christian and Carson Kitchen. If you're interested in hearing more about the space industry, join us every day for T- Space Daily, available on all major podcast platforms. Find out more at space.n2k.com. We'd love to know what you think of our show. You can email us at space@n2k.com. Your feedback ensures that we deliver the information that keeps you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. This show was produced by Alice Carruth. Our associate producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I am your host, Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
T-minus.
Hey everybody, Dave here. I've talked about Delete Me before, and I'm still using it because it still works. It's been a few months now, and I'm just as impressed today as I was when I signed up. Delete Me keeps finding and removing my personal information from data broker sites, and they keep me updated with detailed reports, so I know exactly what's been taken down. I'm genuinely relieved knowing my privacy isn't something I have to worry about every day. The Delete Me team handles everything. It's the set it and forget it peace of mind. And it's not just for individuals. Delete Me also offers solutions for businesses, helping companies protect their employees' personal information and reduce exposure to social engineering and phishing threats. And right now, our listeners get a special deal, 20% off your Delete Me plan. Just go to joindeleteme.com/N2K and use promo code N2K at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/N2K, code N2K.